Well, good morning to you, all you out there coming on into the webinar room this morning. Welcome into our monthly topic webinar. Come on in, and what I want you to do first, while we're waiting for everybody to arrive to get started, just check in that chat box over on the right-hand side and let me know your name and where you are logging in from. It may be morning where you are. It's morning here in the Pacific Northwest, but you may be in far reaches across the world. We have Joni and Laura from Florida, Pamela from Niagara Falls, Michelle. Oh my gosh, it's going so fast. Hard to read. I already see New Zealand. I see New Zealand and Louisiana. There's so many of you. Oh my goodness. Let's go back.
Germany.
Yep, Germany. I had a couple people from Germany the other day, and UK. We have Canada phoning in. So Nick, Stephen, Eileen, Don, Danielle, James from Vegas, Maria. Maria's from Germany, and Jeanette from New Mexico. Julie from New Zealand was the one I mentioned earlier, and then Terry from Washington. So she's our neighbor. Welcome. Anthony, Omar, Rachel, Marina, Gosia, Dana, Anne, Francie from South Africa. So there we go. Yet another continent. Hello. All right.
Got these Texas people showing up. Where are these guys coming from?
Nice.
It's my people.
Kind of sort of me. I didn't grow up there, but I went to school there. I do love Texas.
Yeah. Pony up.
Right. That's right. Marissa, Clover, Alan, welcome to all of you. Dazzle, hello. Good to see you here today. Brent from Boise, Carl from Yellowknife, Louise from Texas. There's Texas. Yep. And then we have a few California people, Vancouver. Oh, and Rhonda is from Kansas, where I grew up, but she's joining from Morocco. So that is certainly exotic and fantastic.
Wow.
Another South Africa person, Linda. Wow, this is awesome. Really all over the world. Another New Zealand, Belinda. And, oh, wow. Washington Island. Is that Washington Island, Wisconsin? Diane? I've never heard of that. I actually was born in Wisconsin. Have not heard of Washington.
Asheville, North Carolina.
Nice. Elliot from Mexico City. So now we have across the other border. Excellent.
ATX.
Wow, so many of you. Yep. Yes, Diane says off the tip of Door County. Okay, very good. Well, let's see. I think some people are going to continue to come on in, but I do kind of want to get us rolling because we have a lot to go through for this webinar. Thank you for joining us. You are here for, I have all this info in my results. Now what? And it's just something that a title that I came up with, I think is appropriate for all the content that we are going over today. And it's just, I too am a Viome customer, and I do remember getting my very first round of results almost 5 years ago. It's been a while. But there is so much valuable information in your Viome app to digest, as it were, and your food and supplement recommendations, your test results, the scores. But where do you start, right? So we spent some time collecting some questions that we were seeing more and more frequently on social media and other areas, and we decided that we would tackle them right here with you, our Viome users. So with that, I have two fantastic people with me. I have Grant, Antoine, and Hilary Keiser from our clinical nutrition team. They are the experts on all of this. They do the extensive research and background work on all of the nutritional elements of your recommendations, the foods, the supplements, the biotics. This ensures that you get the right foods and nutrients for you. And I thank you for your work. And I also welcome you to the webinar. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Lisa.
Hello, everyone. Welcome.
All right. So let's go ahead. Let's just jump right in. All right.
Do
All
it.
right. Here we go. So this first category of questions is, what should I do first? Which is a great thing to start off with when you're seeing new results in your app and you don't quite know where to focus. So this first question is, when I first open my app, after getting my results, what should I look at first? Foods, supplements, scores. There's so much information. Who can tackle that one for me?
I'll jump in. Yeah. It is a lot of information, for better or worse. But I guess rule number one is don't freak out, right? We suggest you go slow, dip your toes in the pool. Don't dive head into the deep. or don't dive headfirst into the deep end. And I think our general recommendation is you want to start on the homepage. If you start on the home tab, you go to the bottom of the app, you'll see the home tab. It's a really good landing page. It's a summary of all things scores and recommendations. From the top, you'll see a breakdown of where your scores landed in terms of good, average, not optimal. Under that, you'll start to see all your not optimal activity. Really just a good synopsis. And as you go down, you'll start to get into your recommendations. We want you to get familiar with your foods. What are your superfoods? What are your voids? You don't have to do the deep dive just yet, but just see what's on there. Get familiar. So as you're going through your day, or maybe you're doing some meal planning or grocery shopping, making some of those dietary choices, like you've got a sense of what your recommendations hold, right? Now, it's important that you can connect with the recommendations, right? You want to know the why. You want to know, hey, if I'm going to take this food out of my diet, there needs to be a pretty darn good reason. Like, broccoli is an amazing food. Why am I pulling this out? Or, name your favorite food. It's always your favorites are the foods you eat the most often that Viome tends to take out up front. So you can tap into those individual foods and recommendations right there from the homepage. We don't want you to go through every single food up front, but through those first few weeks, get familiar. Like, hey, why is this being pulled out? Tap on that. You'll see a description. You'll see the scores, it supports, and if you really want to get nerdy, you can go down those references. We don't recommend you do that up front again, but there is a ton of information there. But take your time, and especially if you're new to a whole foods diet, you're coming in from a standard American diet. Change is hard and it takes time, and certainly we want to be motivated and create that change, but we don't want to set unrealistic expectations, and we don't necessarily want to change everything at once, right? And so set yourself up for success. Don't overwhelm yourself with all the information. Stick with the basics, and as time goes on, you're going to get more and more familiar with those recommendations. I think that's the best way to go.
Excellent. Well, hopefully that can help everybody focus just a little bit. I just remember when I first opened my app, there was so much. I was like, oh, so I concentrated on those superfoods and avoid foods for sure.
Absolutely. And especially folks that are coming in, they don't have a science background, they don't have a medical background or a nutritionist background. This can be very overwhelming, but stick to those basics, look at those superfoods, those avoids, see what little steps you can start to take. And little by little, start to understand those whys and the background information, the science behind it.
Exactly. Thank you, Grant. All right, so here's our next question. What is important to address first? Should I throw out everything in my fridge and pantry? Should I cut out all avoid foods? What should I do?
No, I'll take this one too. It kind of goes hand in hand with, those incremental changes we were just talking about. Don't go to your pantry and just dump everything, throw everything out. That works good for some people. We kind of have as humans, an all or nothing mindset where it can be very black and white sometimes, but it's not recommended. Kind of like I just said, be familiar with those superfoods and avoids, and start paying attention, looking at your pantry and your refrigerator and saying, hey, what can I start to liquidate or get rid of this week or the next week? What can I replace this food with, according to Viome's recommendations? These incremental changes and steps are going to set you up for success for the long haul. And that's what we really want, right? We want this diet to stick. We want you to feel supported and feel like there's no unrealistic, there's nothing you can't do or achieve through this diet, right? And we know it's a lot, but with those small changes, you're going to start to experience what that feels like in your body. And then that's going to motivate you to continue to make more change. But maybe doing everything all at once, drinking from that fire hose, not going to be recommended. And one thing Janelle likes to talk about is this scarcity mindset when it comes to the avoid foods. She always says, like, You ever been told, hey, don't do this thing or don't eat that thing, and then now all you can think about is doing that thing or eating that thing? She talks to us about this a lot. And for those of you, it's a little bit of know thyself. For those of you who know you react in that way, we would suggest that you really focus on your superfoods, right? What can I have? What is all this great nutrition that Viome's recommending? Look at those superfoods, look at those enjoys, and really focus on those and less so on what to avoid. And naturally, as you're bringing in these new foods, you're going to crowd out some of these other undesired foods or avoid foods. And so there's going to be this little natural selection, this little natural pressure to move those things out of the diet as you focus on those superfoods. So yeah, I think that's the great baby steps. And I think more importantly, as you're doing this, as you're just kind of taking inventory, not just of, I want to make a note here, don't take just inventory of your pantry and refrigerator, but also take inventory of your symptoms. Like, where are you at in your body? What are you experiencing? What issues are you dealing with? And actually make a note of it, and something that you can look back to later on, and say, hey, I'm at the beginning of this journey. What are my goals? What are my expectations? Where do I want to be in 6 months? Again, connect with your why, not just Viome's why for the recommendations, but your why, and kind of develop that plan. So the next time you're hitting up the grocery store or that farmer's market or that Costco, you've got a plan and you're setting yourself up for success.
Excellent. Great advice. Thanks, Grant. All right. So next up is we're going to move to the area of test results. We have a few questions in here. So the first question is, a lot of my scores don't look very good. Should I be worried? So Hilary, is that yours?
Yeah, I can take this one because I can really relate to it. I know, Lisa, you mentioned when you first tested, it was a lot. When I first tested, my scores weren't very good either. I think I had maybe 2 good scores and everything else was like not optimal or average. That was a really big wake-up call for me. I thought I was eating a super healthy diet, but I didn't realize that foods I was eating were making me feel worse. So what I learned from that experience is that the Viome test, it's a wellness test, right? It's not a diagnostic test. So we're not diagnosing diseases here. So if your scores are bad, it doesn't necessarily mean you're in terrible health. But that said, if you are experiencing chronic disease or something like that, this might be a good opportunity to have a conversation with your doctor and make sure that your recommendations work well with what your doctor has been prescribing for you. And remember that the beauty of the Viome test really lies in this ability to detect these early molecular manifestations of imbalances in your body. So we can detect these early manifestations, and then we give you the tools that you need to help correct them. When I tested, I found out what foods weren't working well for me. I cut those out, and it did take some time, but fast forward 4 years later, my most recent test, I think it's like flip-flopped. Before I had maybe a handful of good scores. Now I only have a handful of bad scores. So, it takes some time, some dedication, but it will get better. So, don't worry. You now have the tools in your toolkit and all will be well.
That's right. Follow those recommendations as consistently as you can, and you're going to support your body for sure.
Absolutely.
All right, here we go. Next up, I found that some of my Viome superfoods showed up on a food sensitivity test for me, which is right. So is that you?
Yeah, I'll take that one. Yeah, so that can be confusing if you have conflicting results. So how do you know what is right? And before I tell you that, let's even talk about what a food sensitivity test is and compare it to what Viome is testing. So a food sensitivity test, it's testing for those more mild delay responses to food. If you're comparing to a food allergy, if you have a food allergy, you have a food allergy. It happens pretty immediately, right? Well, these food sensitivities are more delayed, things like gastrointestinal upset, maybe some skin conditions, things like that, a little bit more mild. So it's still an immune response, but it's just a little bit different than allergies. And now these types of tests are generally meant to be a guide for you to do an elimination diet. So you know which ones to focus on. You take those foods out of your diet, and then after some period of time, you reintroduce them, you see how you feel. Now, on the other hand, our Viome test, we are focusing on the analysis of your gene expression. So we're looking at the gut microbiome, what microbes are there, and what are they doing. And then we use our AI to predict how foods will interact with their activity. You know, what foods, your superfoods, are going to make that activity better, and what foods are potentially making that worse. That will be on your avoid, your minimize list. So these are just pieces of the puzzle. You know, there are many different reasons why we can react to the foods that we eat. So both can be equally beneficial for you to learn about yourself and what's going on. And so how do you know which is right? Well, listen to your body. You know, if you know that you're reacting to a certain food and it's a superfood, honor that. You know, your body is speaking to you and you should be listening. Now, if you know you have a certain sensitivity or allergy, we do have a spot on the questionnaire for you to report that. So if you do that, then we'll take that into account in your food recommendations. We'll put your allergy foods on your avoid list, your sensitivities on this minimize list. So, you know, most importantly, listen to your body, report it on your questionnaire. And yeah, that's it. Just listen to your body.
All right. Good advice for sure, because that question does come up in my open houses that I talk about. And I'm like, make sure you mark them, you know, if they're known allergies, you know, in your questionnaire. And then we won't, you know, if they happen to be selected, we won't put them on your superfood list, you know, so.
Yeah, and same with the supplements too, that works for your supplements. If you know you have a sensitivity or an allergy, we don't want to give that to you in your supplements for you to be taking it every day. So yeah, make sure you report it on your questionnaire. If you forgot, you can always reach out to our customer service team and they can make those updates.
All right. All right. So thank you very much for that answer. Let's see what's next here. I see viruses listed on the Your Gut Active Microbes list in my app. What are these viruses from and how can I get rid of them? So this is actually a subscore. This is not one of the main scores, but people do tend to find it and go, oh, look at that. So talking about it a little bit might be good.
Yeah, we don't want to take any particular species from this list and look it up necessarily. That can really freak you out. You know, naturally, when people think microbiome, they think bacteria, right? I think that's the most common, you know, thought process. But the microbiome actually consists of not just bacteria, but virus, fungi, other eukaryotes, protozoa. That is this microbiota, this microbiome that we talk about. So viruses are just a part of that milieu. So it's not abnormal to find viruses in your stool specimen. Most of those viruses that we pick up in the gut are going to be from your foods, right? They're going to be those plant-based viruses that you know, infect a particular tomato variety or bell pepper or onion, you know, what have you, basil. And because you ingested that food, now you're carrying that virus, or at least we're detecting it in your sample. But don't freak out and don't get alarmed. And you know, really, we provide that list as a courtesy, but no scores are based off that list. And sometimes I wonder if we're doing more harm than good by listing those microbes. Because it can be a little daunting, two, a little confusing, especially if you're not familiar with microbiome science. Ultimately, if you're really concerned, then have a conversation with your doctor. You know, pull it up. Just because there is a virus present, that doesn't indicate infection. We're actually by law not allowed to report any pathogens in your samples. Right? We're a wellness platform, so even if we see pathogenic bacteria or viruses. We can see COVID coming through. We can't report it with this particular test. But that's often really good, because even though there is a microbe present, we're exposed to these pathogens all the time, guys, in our environment, in our foods. That's what our immune system's for. So our immune system's constantly going to bat and controlling these guys. And then hopefully that's why we have so few infections, right? So just the presence of a microbe doesn't indicate infection. So don't get too hung up on that. Some people like to go in and say, hey, do I have any Akkermansia? Do I have this, that, the other? How many probiotic species I have? And that's kind of fun, but don't get too wrapped up in it. And again, if you're truly concerned, try to talk to your doc and see what a next step might be.
All right. Well, there you go. Excellent. So our next topic is food recommendations. And this has quite a few questions in them. So the first one is for daily servings of each food group. And those of you, I noticed that I'm just going to interrupt for just a minute. There are a lot of questions coming in on the chat. And we're going to try to see if we can answer some. We may not be able to answer all in this time period, but some of these questions I've been noticing that people have been putting in the chat are questions that we're talking about in our different topics here. So I just wanted to alert people so you perk up your ears. For the daily servings of each food group, I have 5 per day of fruits and grains. Do I need to have one of those servings be a minimized food? Are minimized foods okay to have? How do I balance this out? So who can take this one?
I've got this one,
Awesome.
Lisa. Okay. So I like this question, how do I balance this out? Because that makes me realize that you're thinking about variety, you're thinking about diversity, you're thinking about balancing out your foods. And that is exactly what we are thinking about too when we're building your food list. We realize that one of the most important parts of a microbiome healthy diet is diversity, right? So eating more diversity in your foods encourages more diversity in the composition, the species in your microbiome, and also the functions that they perform. So eating from your superfood, your enjoy, and your minimize list is going to be really important.
Oh,
Whoops. Oh, Hilary, I think you hit a button. There you go.
baby, come back.
Sorry about that. I don't know what happened. Right. So I was talking about diversity, right? So we want to have diversity in our diet. We want to be eating, of course, a lot of our superfoods first, freely enjoying the enjoy foods, and then having some minimized foods. Now, how much? That is the question. So we recommend that you limit your minimized foods to no more than 20% of your daily intake. So in this example, this person has 5 fruits and grains per day. 20% of that would be about 1 serving of your fruits and grains a day from your minimized list. So how do foods end up on your minimized list? That's also probably an interesting thing to cover here. There's several reasons foods can end up on your minimized list. There is your scores, of course. So just as an example, say you have high methane gas production, that score is not optimal. Now, your microbiome, if that's happening, it can be converting carnitine in your foods into more methane gas. So you'll see the foods that are highest in carnitine on your avoid list, and then foods moderately high in carnitine, like say, for example, dairy products on your minimized list. So there's still really good nutrition that you can get from the dairy products. You just shouldn't be eating a lot of them. One of the other reasons foods can end up on your minimized list is our glycemic response model. This is probably one of the largest studies of its kind, where we've had 1,000 participants wear continuous glucose monitors, eat prescribed foods, and then we look at what happens to their glycemic response, what happens to their microbiome when they eat these things, so that we could develop a model to predict whether you will have a glycemic response to certain foods. So, I might be able to eat a banana and be fine, but Grant might eat a banana and have a really high glycemic response. And really the key is to maintain a stable blood sugar. So you can have minimized foods. You don't have to eat minimized foods every day. The idea is just to be eating a diverse diet and really focusing on your superfoods first and foremost, avoiding your avoid foods.
All right.
And that's
excellent.
the key.
I saw one question that I did want to talk about because we were talking about numbers of fruits and grains per day. Somebody asked, I fast during most of the day and I only eat lunch and dinner, but I can't get on all these servings of vegetables that you recommend me. What do you recommend that I do? So I just thought maybe we could talk about that for 1 second. The food recommendations that I think are on the homepage of the the app. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll jump in here. It really depends on your goals, right? I think Viome's recommendations can be a great complement to any other strategy you're trying to use, but it's like, what are your goals and where are you trying to get? We don't really know your personal case. But if you're fasting, perhaps you're focused on weight loss or blood sugar control, or you're trying to get into sub ketogenesis. I think I saw a question in there about whether mild ketosis was considered beneficial. Those are all great strategies, and depending on what your goal is, then absolutely, those are great tools. So I wouldn't focus so much on Viome serving recommendations, depending on your goal, than the actual foods themselves, right? So when you are having those opportunities, you're in your feeding window, you want to try to maximize how many of those Viome recommendations you can incorporate into that feeding time. I think that would be the highest priority. And then depending on whether you're trying to gain weight or you're trying to lose weight, then you can try to dial that in with the serving. So first and foremost, quality of the diet, following those superfood and avoid recommendations, and then you can kind of play and tinker and depending on where you're trying to get, really modify those macros for yourself.
All right. Hey, thanks for that. All right. So the next question is, if we can eat, if we can eat tomatoes and peppers after the, did you want to say one more thing about the last?
Yeah, I was just thinking I never went back to the mild ketosis. Yeah. It is beneficial. I think what's not beneficial is this idea of a ketogenic diet when we think we can eat all the meat, cheese, bacon, sausage.
All that fat.
Yeah, you can do keto and still do a whole food, plant-based ketogenic diet, right? These things are out there. And while doing that, you can incorporate your Viome recommendations. So I think ketosis itself is beneficial. How you get there could be questionable, right? When we're talking about the other metrics of our health and where we're trying to get. So just wanted to throw that in there. We still want to focus on the quality of the diet, bottom line.
Absolutely. You got to support those areas of health that need attention, which your scores tell you. All right. So the next question is, and I've seen quite a few questions about tomatoes in particular, but I think that they mentioned they were on their avoid list. This question is about if we can eat tomatoes and peppers after the 3 to 4 week period once the food virus is gone, want to just come back. And this is the second line in your avoid foods, which says that the top line says 6 months. And then if you have a second line, it would be for 30 days, and that's because of a food virus. So so there is also lots of questions about tomatoes in general, and a couple questions that I saw about, can I avoid fresh tomatoes and just eat sauce? So I do want to talk about this food virus, but I also talk about how to treat your avoid foods really quickly. So Grant, is this your question?
Yeah, I'll take this one. So want to just come back? Yeah, it absolutely could. These plant viruses, again, just mentioned, as you eat that particular food, if there's a virus that's contained in it, we're going to see that in your stool sample. Those viruses tend to linger. That's why we'll pull out the food. These viruses are very, they have a strong association with the tomato, the pepper, the plant, or even meat that they're associated with. So if we pull that food out, that substrate that virus needs to replicate and survive, then we can shed that virus, right? Do we have to do that? What are these viruses? What are they doing in there? It's a new field. We don't exactly know. We know there are some indications that there could be some inflammation around the gut lining and the border of the interface between the inside of the gut and the outside. And there have been some associations with symptoms. digestive symptoms, but it's not 100% clear. So we take a conservative approach. We say, hey, yeah, we want to try to clear that virus, but we realize the potential nutrition of these foods. They tend to be very common foods, right? Think about tomatoes, bell peppers, like, gosh, those things are in so many recipes, no matter what cuisine or where in the world you're at. But let's pull those foods out. Let's give you 30 days. Let's see if we can clear that substrate or that virus by pulling out the substrate. And then let's reintroduce. And absolutely, it's just a matter of time before, as you're eating those foods or any food, that you might come across an exposure and have another virus. So you'll see from test to test, you know, sometimes you might have multiple plant viruses, others you don't have any. It's just, you know, again, these exposures, depending on our diet, and that's okay. And you know, really, you could think of this as an opportunity to have a little mini elimination diet as you're pulling some of these foods out. If you want to know, hey, is this plant virus bothering me or is this food bothering me? So as you pull those out, maybe you introduce them one at a time and see, hey, how do I feel in my body when I reintroduce this tomato? Am I have a return of symptoms that maybe had disappeared? Or we typically, with the classic elimination diet, you'd want to introduce the food on day one, maybe have a little bit of that food for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then don't have any more of that food for the next 2 days. And then because these are IgG mediated reactions, they tend to be delayed reactions. So food sensitivity reactions might not pop up right when you eat the food. It might be day 2, day 3, especially if you kind of brain foggy, joint pains, headaches, this kind of thing, maybe, some impact on your gut. But you eat that food, day 2, 3 comes by and you don't have any symptoms or anything that you can attach to that, then hey, we consider that food safe, and then you move on to the next food. And maybe you're trying bell peppers. So just some food for thought there, and a way you can maximize that time when you're pulling these foods out to see, hey, how's my diet or these foods or these viruses, how might they be impacting me? Exactly.
And just so you know, if you shop at a grocery store, it is possible to get these food viruses again, because it's an agricultural issue, right? It's viruses that's infecting food, so not humans. But still, as Grant was saying, these things can be irritating to your body. So stay away from it for a month, see how you do, just like Grant said. And there you go.
Yeah, that's a good point, Lisa, because even when you're shopping and you're going through the farmer's market or the produce section, you can look at the foods, and a lot of these, like mottle virus, it's because the leaves or the fruit becomes mottled. It has these little bumps and it looks funky. So when you're looking at your produce, you can kind of self-inspect and say, oh, you know what, that one might be a little suspicious for plant virus. Let me grab this other guy. Just a heads up.
Yep, absolutely. So it is possible to steer clear of it. I mean, people are like, what if you organic, you know, and it's possible, but you don't know until you test. So
organic's not gonna have anything to do with it.
Yeah, it's literally a food virus that jumps around from crop to crop. And that is it. All right. So there's a lot of questions coming in, and just know that I will, if we don't get to a lot of questions, I will be looking at the questions after the webinar and make sure that I get anybody any answers or help that they need. All right. So because like things like this, like people's questions, they have so many questions, and some of them are definitely related to our topics today. So I just want to make sure that everybody can hear their answers. So this next question is kind of along the same avenue. Raw almonds are minimized for me, but almond milk is okay. What about almond butter or almond flour? This is a very common question with other things too. Peanuts, other things like rice milk, rice noodles, things like that. So who does this one go to?
I'll take this one. Yeah, very common question. Like, Viome, what the heck are you doing? What do you mean I could have almond milk, but I can't have almonds? So it turns out, depending on how we process the foods, you have different impact on the nutrition of that food, right? Almonds, most commonly, they're going to be avoided because of their oxalate content, right? If maybe your microbiome isn't very efficient at metabolizing those oxalates, then we want to try to pull some of that oxalate out of your diet. And almonds are one of these foods that just happen to be high in oxalates. Well, where are those oxalates? A lot of those oxalates are in the skin of you see the brown right there in the almond. They hide in that coating along with the phytic acid. So during the almond milk production process, they're soaking and they're removing these skins. And so naturally they're pulling these oxalates and phytic acid out of the product before they pulverize it, add water and their guar gums and whatever to make the actual milk. So as far as the substrates that are connected to some of the Viome scores, we see a difference when we look at raw almonds versus almond milk. And that's why we'll allow the milk, but not the raw almonds that are going to have all those things that we're trying to pull out. So now the almond butters, the almond flour, those typically they are whole almond, and they will still have those substrates in there just because of the way they're processed. They tend to just be whole almonds that you dump, and now you can ground that up, and now you've got almond flour. So those tend to stay on the avoid list. We recommend that, but almond milk is okay. And we're trying to fine tune these recommendations, right? We never want to say, hey, an almond's an almond, no matter what form. Some cases we have to do that, but if we can find, as the clinical nutrition team's digging through these nuances, we want to see those differences in the multiple varieties of a food, or even a multiple variety of a lentil, right? You're going to have your green, your brown, your black, your red lentils. We want to see, hey, what are the little subtle differences in these foods that people aren't paying attention to? How are these changes impacting our biology, the microbiome's biology and its metabolism? What influence are these substrates, and what can we call out, and what can we really differentiate? So that's our job. That's what we're trying to do in the scenes. And so, and we love food, right? We want you to have as much food as you possibly can. So we're going to try to find how can we possibly give this, but maybe not that, and try to distinguish. So yeah, that's you got to believe we're on your side.
All right. Well, there you go. I hope that helps everybody. All right. Our next question is, all right. So here's a question that I do see a lot. What is the Viome recommendation for alcohol? There's also the question of red wine's supposed to be good, right? So there you go.
Goodness.
All right, I'll be the bearer of bad news. We make our recommendations based on the science. And if you look at all the science on alcohol, it's not very good for your body. Yeah, I know, it's so fun, right? But it may be in the moment, but in the long term, it's not the best thing you should be doing for your body. It's disrupting your gut microbiome. Alcohol just indiscriminately kills all bacteria, right? That's why alcohol, you use it, to sanitize things, right? If you're indiscriminately wiping out your microbiome, this can ultimately cause a leaky gut. It can cause a weakened immune system. These are all the things that the Viome program is trying to help you heal. So alcohol can be counterproductive. I could go on and on about the bad things about alcohol, but it's inflammatory, it's damaging to the liver, it changes our neurochemistry. It's just downright not good. So we recommend to avoid it. And yeah, like Lisa said, people will always ask, but I thought red wine was beneficial, right? Isn't there resveratrol in it, right?
How much wine would you have to drink to get enough resveratrol?
You would have to, I think I did the calculation once, and you would have to drink like 8 liters of wine a day to get a significant dosage of resveratrol.
What?
At that point, I don't know, your blood alcohol content, you might not be living. So if you want the benefits of resveratrol, your best bet's take resveratrol, or maybe eat the grapes even. I'm on this journey of no alcohol myself too, and I'm finding all sorts of awesome mocktails and non-alcoholic drinks at my local grocery store. There's non-alcoholic beers now. You can find even non-alcoholic spirits, which is pretty cool. And these generally are going to be, a healthier option. They're herbal, they're plant-based, they're non-alcoholic. So if you need to make the switch, and this is new for you, that can be a really great bridge into no alcohol. And then for those of you who just like, no, I'm still going to drink, just make it count. If you're going to have that glass of red wine, let that be your treat and, enjoy it. Try not to be guilty about it. But if you can avoid it, you can avoid alcohol. That's what's going to be best for your body.
Absolutely. And my husband and I just went out the other night and to this bar that we frequent, and he was a designated driver. And so while I had my nice little one cocktail that I would enjoy, there's an extensive list of non-alcoholic drinks, and he ordered a couple of them, and I tasted them. They are so delicious. They're really, and they're even having, for lack of a better word, synthahol, meaning like alcohol that's non-alcoholic stuff that's supposed to taste like alcohol, like whiskey or something like that. So it's definitely something to look into for sure.
Yeah, I want to say just one more thing here, because there's a nuance that I don't know that a lot of people are familiar with. And a lot of people, like, you got the beer commercials and the seltzers, and they're talking about how many calories and, only this many calories, only one more calorie than this other, whatever. They don't have to report the calories from alcohol. They only have to report the calories from the macronutrients that you typically see on a nutritional facts panel. They only have to report on those calories. Well, it turns out alcohol itself, ethanol, has more calories than carbs and proteins. So we think of nutritionally, you think of carbs and proteins per gram, you get about 4 kilocalories per gram for both of those foods. Fats are 9. Alcohol, ethanol, is 7. So it's more of a fat, or it's closer to fat. And it's got a high, almost double energy, deposit versus carbs and proteins. And they don't even have to report this. So you can calculate it if you want to geek out and do some math, look at that alcohol percentage, how much you're consuming, and then try to do some math. But they don't have to report it on the label. So it's not very transparent. And then like winemakers, they don't even have to put macronutrients on their labels. They don't have to report the amount of sugar. And guess what? Wines, especially American wines from California, wherever, we're not as regulated as some of these European countries. We dump a ton of sugar in there to make it more palatable and increase the alcohol content. So maybe do a little digging, do a little educate yourself, think about some of these nuances and see, hey, where does alcohol fit into my goals and my lifestyle?
Exactly. That is great advice. So I do want to send out a handout to everybody now, just because I've seen a lot of people saying, all of my avoid foods I cook with. Oh my gosh, what do you recommend if you can't have this or can't have that? And we actually did a webinar last fall that was called Cooking with the Clinical Nutrition Team. And we talked about food substitutions for very common avoid foods like tomatoes, like onions, like garlic, and things like that. And in this PDF that you are downloading now, there are superfood recipes, but there's also a cheat sheet of if you have to avoid this is a good substitution for it. And as well, I want to also give you the actual replay of that webinar too. So this is a link that is a replay of the full webinar that we did. If you want some more information, take a look at that. And so with that, hopefully that's helpful for everybody that has those questions in the chat right now. And I do want to go ahead, and they're downloading it. They're downloading it like mad. They want to know. Okay, good. So our next question for food is, hang on one second. I'm going to close this down. When general foods are listed, such as lettuces, apples, onions, and grapes, does that mean all kinds? And I do notice a difference between foods like that are listed here and then mushrooms. We have, I think, 5 mushrooms on our food list, and they are all individually named out: maitake, shiitake, things like that. So Grant, are you going to answer this one?
Yeah, I'll take this. If you don't see anything to distinguish the foods, then it means all. So if you see apples, we don't have varieties of apples, for example, listed in our food database. So if your superfoods are apples or your void foods are apples, then we mean all apples. Now there are some nuances there. You just mentioned the mushrooms, some of our greens, like we have the recommendation for lettuce that's on the question. Typically lettuce, we're thinking of like iceberg or romaine or butter lettuce. There's kind of a group there of the different lettuce, but we have individual greens, arugula, what else is in there? Rhubarb, kale, spinach.
Radicchio.
Yeah. So you can look for those. But if you do your quick search as you're going through your list and you don't see anything to distinguish the different varieties, then the general recommendation would be to pull all those foods out. or bring them in, whatever the recommendation is.
Exactly. All right. So there you go. So hopefully that will help you navigate your food list a little bit better. I can understand that there's confusion on that. If there's individual foods listed and then just lettuce, so it's totally understandable.
And use that search tool. You go to the nutrition tab,
Yep.
look at your foods, use that search tool, and just put in apple, and then see what pops
Exactly.
up, or put in whatever it is you're looking for. Use that search tool. That's
Exactly. In your app, on the nutrition tab, in your app, it's on the bottom. In the browser version, it's on the top. It just is a line that says search. So there you go. All right. So next category is supplements, and I see a lot of questions about supplements in here. So I'm gonna take a look at them as we go through this group of questions. So here's the first question: tomatoes are on my avoid list, but my supplement ingredients contain lycopene, which is obviously a nutrient ingredient in tomatoes. Can I take that even though tomatoes are on my avoid list? And Hilary, I believe this is yours.
Yes. Yes. So whenever anyone is thinking about taking supplements that may have to do with some food on their avoid list, I always recommend looking at the reason that food is avoid for you. So with lycopene, I don't think there's any reason to avoid tomatoes because of their lycopene. So the lycopene is purified from the tomatoes. You're not getting all the other plant parts. So as long as lycopene isn't a void for you, go ahead and take the lycopene. But you may find some things like I mentioned carnitine earlier, like that is a supplement, and it may show up on your avoid list for methane gas production. So in that case, you wouldn't want to take that supplement because it can be harmful to your methanogenesis pathways. So, just read your avoid list, understand the reasons, and then make sure that supplement isn't going to cause that avoid reaction that we're trying to avoid.
Exactly. Okay. Next question. Precision supplements and biotic recommendations. I'm experiencing, and I've seen this also in the chat. So those of you who have posted a question about being gas and having a little bloating when taking the probiotics and prebiotics, what is happening here when you take your supplements and that happens?
What is happening? Your microbiome is changing. And it's very normal to experience gas and bloating when you take most likely a prebiotic is what's causing it. So prebiotics are these really complex carbohydrates. So they're kind of like repeating units of the same molecule, and they're very complex. Our bodies cannot break them down. It's kind of like they're locked. But our microbiome, certain species in the microbiome, they have the key, and they have the enzymes that they can break down these prebiotic fibers. So if you haven't been eating a lot of fiber in your diet, now your microbiome has this key. They're unlocking these plant fibers. Well, they're going to start fermenting these fibers, and that can cause some gas and some bloating, some discomfort. And that's completely normal. Another reason why these prebiotics can cause some of that discomfort is they soak up a lot of water. They bulk up your stool, which is good. We want that. It helps pull things out and helps with our motility. But that can make us a little dehydrated and can cause a little bit of bloating. So what I would recommend is always drink lots of water with your fiber supplements. It's going to help, like I said, with the bulking and help move things through. And then if you are experiencing still with a lot of water, this gas and bloating, you shouldn't have to be in discomfort. You can take a small part of your stick pack and then increase over time as your body tolerates that small amount. If you're able to take maybe a quarter of a stick pack for a few days and you're not experiencing any gas and bloating, try it half and so on, right? Until you can really tolerate comfortably the full stick pack. So yes, it does mean it's working, but you don't necessarily have to be in discomfort for it to work.
Exactly. Now, I saw somebody with a related question, not on probiotics and prebiotics, but on their foods. She said, I've eaten superfoods and enjoy foods for 2 weeks straight and have nothing but bloating and gas. So is there any advice for that person? I think it's kind of along the same lines as this, right? So if you're having these all of these foods, maybe try to cut back on those foods and introduce other foods. Hilary, would you have a piece of advice for her?
Yeah, it's likely those fruits, the veggies, the high fiber foods that are causing that gas and bloating. So you might work your way up to that full amount of those fruits and veggies that you're supposed to be eating. Ease your way into it until you can feel a little bit more comfortable.
Exactly. So I hope.
And of course,
Yes.
plenty of waters.
Tons of water, that goes without saying. Yeah. So I hope that helps you. And now here's another question on supplements and biotics. I've been taking my supplements for about a month and I'm not noticing any difference in how I feel. Why would that be?
Well, supplements are amazing, but they are not a drug. They're not a substitute for a healthy diet. They're not a cure for a bad diet. It really takes time and dedication to both your diet and the supplementation for changes to happen. And for most of us, we've probably been eating a really unhealthy diet or making some unhealthy choices for a good portion of our lives. So it's not just going to flip right away. It takes time for things to work. That said, there are some nuances in the ingredients that can affect how long it takes for them to work. Like, for example, if you take B vitamins, you'll probably feel the effect right away. B vitamins can be somewhat energizing. They can influence your dreams a lot. So you might notice those the first day or within a few days or maybe even weeks. But then some other things, they can take longer, like glucosamine. This is a supplement that we take generally for joint support because it's a part of our cartilage. Now, if you take glucosamine, this can take a month to 2 months to even notice a difference in joint pain. So if you're not noticing anything right away, it just takes some time. I know when I took mine at first, I didn't notice a big change. And in fact, from day to day, I don't really notice, a whole lot. But personally, what I do notice is when I don't take them. So if I don't take my pre and probiotics, I notice my stomach is a little more sensitive, and like foods that I don't normally tolerate will upset my stomach. So it's really possible that there are changes happening. They're just subtle and you don't notice. And this is exactly why we encourage that you retest. So our recommendation is to retest every, say, 3 to 6 months or so. And then you'll start to see on your test results the changes in your microbiome that you may not really be able to feel. And of course, when you retest as well, we're going to update your recommendations, your foods, your supplements to reflect your current biology.
Exactly. All right. Yes, go ahead, Grant.
Can I squeeze in? And one more thing, people tend to not notice when they start supplements, they notice when they stop supplements. Yeah. So if you've been on your program for 6-8 months, you kind of forget like where you started, where you came from. And so a lot of people, when they stop supplementation, then they see a return of maybe some of these signs or symptoms. And that's where people tend to feel it the most, which is, not as, intuitive, but it's my experience.
Yeah,
all
me
right.
too.
Well, there you go. I hope that's helpful. It's definitely helpful for me. We do have a few more questions to get through. We may go over a few minutes because I also have a quick demo to do. So let's get to this topic, retesting. People have asked a couple questions about, should I retest? When should I retest? What should I look at my scores from retest to retest, which is also something that comes up in questions quite frequently. So who's handling this one?
I'll take this one. We spoke earlier about kind of taking inventory, not just of your kitchen, but of your signs and symptoms. I think at retesting, before you even look at your scores, check back in yourself, do another inventory. How am I doing in my body? Where are my symptoms? How's my GI health? And just do a check-in. And then maybe even after you have that sit down, then pull up that previous and try to compare. So the reason I say this is because there's a tendency for customers at retest to, like, they're feeling better, they have more energy, they lost some weight, they're not getting as many coughs and colds, and but gosh darn it, this one score just didn't improve, or maybe it went up 3 points or went down 2 points, and they get really zoomed in. So we just want to try to encourage you. What matters most is how you're feeling. And why we don't have like the best measuring tool to check in with you. We have our questionnaires, but you are the best measurement of your health and how you're feeling. So do that first. Personally, I like to check in on my active microbial diversity. I always want to see, hey, how is my diversity improving? That's one of my pain points. That's one of my opportunities for improvement. So I always want to see, as I'm sticking to this whole food, plant-based, diverse diet, like I want to see that improving as much as I possibly can. Outside of that, looking at your health scores, these are going to be the broad strokes. It's a good summary. Those upper level health scores, just to give you a quick synopsis, and then your biological age I like to look at. I like to track that along with my diversity and see those how those are improving. The biological age is going to work on a separate model, right? Always keep that in mind. It's not attached to the scores. We tend to see correlations between things like your cellular health and energy scores and biological age, but not necessarily. Again, it's a separate model, a different predictive model. But I like to start there. But I think the overall message is don't get too zoomed in. Don't get lost in the weeds. Don't immediately go to those pathway scores and be like, hey, why isn't this thing moving? Change takes time. Microbiome takes time. We know there's some immediate changes that happen in the short term, but then longer lasting changes, those beneficial changes that we want to see can take much longer. And it's not like we're in a test tube, right, where we can have some really rapid changes that are long lasting. No, we constantly have these other stimuli in our environment, in our life, that are constantly influencing and confounding our progress. So don't expect from test to test to see, I went from all not optimal to all good. I don't think that's a realistic expectation. We want to see incremental changes over time. You want to see that trend, and you don't want to get too caught up in any particular loss for that retest. So I think that's the best way to look at it. And then and then have a candid conversation with yourself too. Like, hey, how committed was I to the diet? How successful do I think I was at getting in my superfoods or avoiding my avoids, et cetera. And kind of strap up your boots and see what can I do to improve on the next round and get even better. So I think that's all good advice.
Absolutely. And also take a look at your lifestyle as well, your lifestyle choices. Do you get movement in? How's your sleep? And stuff like that. And just remember, it's a marathon, not a sprint, right? The lifelong journey to being healthier and staying healthier, right? So absolutely. I totally agree with everything that you said, Grant. That's a really good answer. Let's see. The next question is, this is a long question. My recommendations from my first test changed my life, and I felt so good with them. When symptoms started coming back at about 5 months, I retested. And that's a good indicator for retesting, for those of you who are asking. My results looked very different from the first time, and there hasn't been a dramatic change in how I feel this time as opposed to the first test. Why would that be? So who can answer this one?
Yeah, I'll take this one as well. I was just kind of touching on this a bit, and so were you, like talking environment and, for this individual, it very well could be whatever they're experiencing has nothing to do with their microbiome, has nothing to do with their Viome scores, right? We can't really gauge that. This is very difficult to answer without more context, without knowing the individual, what they're experiencing, and what else is going on in their life. I don't know, even like all things being equal from retest to retest, I would expect someone new to the diet would experience a lot of change up front. And then as time goes on, those changes will be, smaller and smaller or more subtle than those initial observations. And, Janelle likes to use the exercise analogy, right? It's just like exercise. If you're sedentary and haven't been moving, you jump into an exercise program, you likely will see some really immediate and drastic results up front, right? But over time, if now you've been working out for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, those changes are much more subtle as you're changing up your exercise and fitness routines. So I don't know that there's anything necessarily abnormal here, but if you find yourself in that spot and maybe your scores aren't jiving with your experience, or maybe then maybe take a step back, see, hey, maybe this isn't, maybe I'm tying it to my diet and my gut, but maybe there's another possibility, and explore those possibilities and dig in a little bit and see where you might be able, where that might lead you. But I wouldn't want you to assume, well, first off, we test a lot with Viome. We're looking at blood, we're looking at saliva, we're looking at stool, we're looking at microbes, we're looking at human cells. We look at a lot, but we don't look at everything. Not yet. We're not there. It could be very informative. It's a great snapshot. It's very comprehensive. But we don't have a score or a recommendation for every single body system complaint, like you name it, right? Pathway. So while we are laying a foundation for health through the microbiome, through nutrition and supplementation, and that foundation works in many dynamic and multi-connected ways, right? When we talk about the gut's connection to the brain, the immune system, our behaviors, inflammation, cardiovascular health, right? Liver health, metabolic health, all these things, it has an impact, but and we want to continue to build that foundation, but we shouldn't expect that every single thing in our lives is going to be auto-corrected, with a few scores and a few nutritional recommendations. Again, it's powerful stuff. That's why we're doing this, and we understand those connections and the importance of epigenetics, as diet as an epigenetic factor, right? Diet as an influence on the microbiome. We know this is huge. That's why we focus on it. It's our main lever in terms of the tools that we want to use to impact your health and your microbiome. But it's not the only one, and certainly the things we're measuring aren't the only things that could be measured.
Right.
So
absolutely.
Real talk.
Absolutely. Real talk. And just stay consistent with your recommendations and all of your healthy lifestyle choices that you're making with your movement and other things like that. Stay consistent with it. All right, retesting. We just have a couple more questions here, and then I can do my special demo with making menus with ChatGPT. And I know we're going over, but if you would like to see a demo on how to take your personalized superfoods, your enjoy foods, your minimized foods, and your avoid foods and make a personalized menu with it with ChatGPT, stick in there. It only takes a couple minutes to show you, and it's very cool. So here we go. Another question with retesting. I am very interested, and I saw this question a couple times too in the chat, why certain foods changed from my avoid minimize lists to my superfood enjoy list when I retested. So what's happening there? It seems kind of odd, but I mean, it can make sense too.
Yeah, it does. And it's a very common question. I'll take this, and I'll try to be quick. I know because we're at the top of the hour. But this is very common. It's actually normal and expected. And one, like, your recommendations aren't meant to be permanent. We don't expect you to take these foods out and then they're out for the rest of your life, or superfoods shouldn't be emphasized for the rest of your life. So we think that's part of the power of these recommendations and the changes in your diet. Hilary spoke to some diversity earlier. Diversity is key, and that's kind of inherent and built into the system here at Viome. Just like biology is dynamic. So should your diet, right? And over time, we're going to see some changes in that activity and scores, and that's going to pull foods in and out of the recommendations and out of your diet, and that's okay. I mentioned earlier that we're always looking for ways so we can bring foods back in or try not to eliminate foods, depending on those details and those small, subtle differences between foods or food types. So we're always trying to get you back to minimizing the foods you have to avoid or minimize, and bringing those into enjoy and superfood. That's the dream. That's the goal. We want to try to get you back to where your microbiome is balanced and you're not reacting negatively to the foods that are in your diet, right? Because you should be able to eat, red meats and not have a huge spike in your TMAO, right? You should be able to eat cruciferous vegetables and not have a high spike in your sulfide gas. That's not normal. That's the stuff we're trying to address. That's why we're pulling those foods out. We try to have an impact on the microbiome, rebalance both the composition and the activity of your microbiome. But we always want to try to bring those foods back in. The test is, if we bring them back in, have we experienced the changes in the microbiome that we want to see? Sometimes yes, sometimes no, right? So there's a lot of variables that can impact that. So if the three of us were all retesting and we had to pull out our cruciferous vegetables, now we're putting them back in. Maybe two of us are able to pull them back in and we don't see a spike in our sulfite gas, and that's great. Again, that's what we wanted, but maybe one of us didn't. Maybe we're a little lagging. Maybe the microbiome didn't adjust for whatever reason. That's okay. And then on the next retest, you would say, oh, well, we're going to pull those foods back in and we're going to have another go at this. And so there's layers there. There's a little complexity. There's dynamics. And again, that trend, we're overall trend. So you might over time see foods flip-flopping and coming back and forth, but that's us testing and probing and saying, hey, what can we get away with now? Can we bring in the broccoli? Can we bring in the kale? Do we have a return of symptoms? Yes, no. But ultimately, to get you that place where you're symptom-free, you're having beneficial metabolic output from your microbiome, you don't have any of these negative consequences from your diet, and you're able to eat a whole food, diverse diet with joy and a happy body and happy life.
Exactly. Well, I actually hope that your foods go from avoid and make their way over to superfoods. That would be awesome. I know I experienced that with broccoli. That's for sure. It went from avoid to minimize to enjoy to superfood. So that was a win for me for sure. So this is a pretty comprehensive question. How does Viome evolve its recommendations with new science updates? And I think Grant, are you answering this one, or is it Hilary? Oh, Hilary, sorry, I apologize.
I feel like I'm on a game show. I love it. So yes, Viome is evolving. Just like you update your software in your computer or your phone or whatever. We are updating the Viome platform. We call it VIOS. VIOS is the platform. And so we have several knowledge bases that live within this platform. There's a knowledge base that maps all of your genetic information that we test to genes in your body, to microbes, to the genes within microbes, right? So there is always new research coming out on genetic analysis. We incorporate that into our catalog on a regular basis. So that's one way. And next is our food knowledge base. So we have a very extensive knowledge base of hundreds of foods, and it's growing constantly. And that knowledge base consists of foods and all of their micronutrients, not just the macronutrients, but turns out the micronutrients really matter a lot. And so we're actually in the middle of an update right now to offer some more foods on that food list. So be on the lookout. Probably later this year, you might have a larger food list. And then there's the recommendations. So how each food is linked to your scores. That is always growing as the research evolves. As we learn from our customers, we are updating that recommendation logic for foods as well. Same with supplements. As new studies are published on how certain supplements do in clinical trials, we're implementing that into our AI and to our knowledge base and including that in your supplement recommendations. The last knowledge base that we have is one that Grant knows very well, and we call it a drug ontology. And so we ask you on your questionnaire what drugs you're taking, because that really matters. Your drugs can't interact with your supplements and the foods that you eat. So new drugs are coming out all of the time. Grant, how many did you just add?
Nearly 300.
Wow.
Yeah. So, there's new drugs that come out all the time. We need to be diligent in making sure that those drugs aren't going to interact with your supplements and your foods. So we're constantly updating that too. And then, we're, like I mentioned before, we're listening to you guys. When you tell us how you're feeling, how things are going, we listen to that. And we really take that to heart, and we make sure that we are growing with you, and that we're implementing, changing, and evolving with your feedback too, because we value your feedback as well. So constant updates going on here. We have teams and teams and teams of brilliant scientists and engineers and doctors and all sorts of people that are working to make sure that you are getting the most scientifically accurate, most up-to-date recommendations that we can possibly offer you. And that, I think, is one of the coolest parts about Viome.
And that is pretty much essentially what we do here. We're all at the time doing new research, new investigations on what can provide our users here that are listening to us right now the best food and supplement recommendations for their current body state. So that's what we do. Thank you for that answer. And we have one quick demo here, and then I have to wrap everything up, but don't log off if you can stay, because I also have a special offer for everybody here. So if you have not seen it or been able to use it, I have a blog article here on how to use ChatGPT or other large language model AI platforms like ChatGPT to plug in your superfoods, your avoid foods, your enjoy foods, and others in order to make a personalized menu for yourself in seconds. And what I'm going to do very quickly here is share my screen and demonstrate it. I have a prompt already in here. And what you're seeing here is basically a request to ChatGPT, where you can reach it at chat.openai.com and create an account for yourself with an email address. That's the only thing you need to provide. And then you ask it questions. So compile up your superfoods, your as many enjoy foods as you know that you will eat and cook with, and in order to put them on the list, and as well your avoid foods. And you create a request that's called a prompt. And it's explained in the blog article. Please create a weekly breakfast, lunch, or dinner menu using the following foods. And from here, I have a large list of foods. It could be longer, of superfoods and enjoy foods. But then you add, but please avoid these foods in the meals. And then you put in these avoid foods. And then hopefully it won't give me an error. Sometimes it does give me an error when I wait long to do it. So I think, oh, yay. So it's doing it. And you just watch how quickly it goes. Now, here's just a word of advice. If you don't like some things that it gives you, throw it out and ask for more. You can continue, as it says, message ChatGPT right here. Just continue to have a conversation with ChatGPT, with the platform, as you are making up this menu. And you're like, can you please give me 5 new breakfasts? Can you give me 5 new dinners? Can you give me recipes for the lunches? Just have a nice conversation with it, and you see how quickly it made up a very simple whole foods menu for you for the entire week. And it is bonkers. It works really well. As long as you can continue to have that conversation with it. Just another word of advice, please don't put any personal information into ChatGPT, not your address, not your phone number, things like that, okay? Just because this is a public domain and you don't want to give that to them. So that is how you use ChatGPT or other AI platforms in order to make a menu for yourself. I hope you try that, and I hope you can enjoy it. The next thing that I want to do here is I want to go back to the deck. And I want to also say, sorry that we don't have time for live Q&A today. As I said, I will be reviewing this chat and pulling out anybody that needs help or answer to their questions. I will help you out. If you haven't checked out the guides section on our blog, please do. It's full of some great articles right there. There's the link if you want to check that out. That is Viome Guides. And because you have joined us today, we have a special offer for you. If you use the code NOWWHAT, one word, in checkout when you are checking out with a full body intelligence test, Grant is excited about this. You get $100 off our full body intelligence test at checkout because you have attended today. And we're very, very happy to have you here today with us. And we hope that these answers that these two amazing individuals here with me provided you with. And like I said, don't worry. Not only will there be a recording sent out tomorrow to everybody, but also I will look at everybody's questions and see how we can get you some help or some answers. And that is it. And we are 15 minutes over. That's the longest we've ever been on a webinar. Thank you.
We had a lot to talk about.
I know we had a ton to talk about. So thank you, Grant and Hilary, for spending this time with us and giving us these knowledgeable answers. And thank you, everybody here, for sticking with us and listening and getting all that information so that you can better implement your Viome recommendations. Good luck to everybody, and thank you very much. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.